Vampires are not supposed to be real. They belong to the shadows of horror novels, the flickering reels of black and white films, and the costumes we laugh at on Halloween. Yet history, folklore, and eyewitness accounts insist otherwise. These tales will make you question the safety of your own shadow. The Highgate vampire, London's hunter. Now, in the 1970s, London's Highgate Cemetery became the setting of one of the most infamous modern vampire legends. It began with a series of sightings and grave desecrations that terrified locals. Witnesses described a tall, gaunt figure dressed in black with fiery red eyes and a face both skeletal and human, seen roaming the cemetery at night. People claim they felt a very oppressive, cold presence that made their skin basically crawl and hearts pound. This story took hold when a man named David Farron, a local occult enthusiast, reported a terrifying encounter. He described standing in the moonlight among toppled headstones when he came face to face with the vampire. Now, the figure allegedly floated rather than walked, and its red eyes seemed to pierce into his very soul. Neighbors reported hearing strange noises like anguished cries and the sound of digging echoing through the cemetery's misty paths. The legend escalated when multiple graves were exhumed. Now, some coffins were found disturbed, bodies allegedly showing signs of liquid loss, which experts tried to rationalize as decomposition anomalies. Yet, locals whispered of the impossible. Now, the press, sensationalized the story, dubbing it the Highgate vampire, and the legend exploded internationally. Now, paranormal researchers flocked to the cemetery, attempting rituals to banish the creature, while tourists and thrill seekers began kind of sneaking into the grounds at night, hoping for a glimpse of the undead. Now, Highgate's story combines eyewitness testimony, alleged physical evidence, and the classic human fascination with the unknown. Whether skeptic or believer, the fear is instilled, and it's very real. Locals remain terrified for decades, claiming the vampire still roamed the dark corners of the cemetery long after the initial sightings. As you leave the fog-choked paths of Highgate behind, the thought lingers, what if the monsters aren't confined to old cemeteries? Mercy Brown, the Rhode Island vampire. Now, in 1892, a small town in Rhode Island became obsessed with the idea that vampires were responsible for a tuberculosis outbreak that had basically decimated several families. Among the most famous cases was Mercy Brown, a young woman whose demise from the disease sparked panic. Tuberculosis, then called consumption, was poorly understood, and the community blamed the disease on restless spirits of the deceased feeding on the living. Now, Mercy's mother, fearing the ongoing passings in their family, convinced local authorities to exhume Mercy's body, and when the grave was opened, her body was reportedly well preserved. Locals claimed her eyes were open and her flesh appeared fresh. They removed her heart and liver, burned them in ashes, and mixed them with water, which her sick brother was forced to drink in the hope of curing him. He had, passed on shortly thereafter, obviously. Now, the Mercy Brown case is particularly haunting because it is one of the last documented instances of a vampire exhumation, in the United States. Now, newspapers at the time covered the story extensively, capturing public fear and fascination. Scholars studying the case note that the, preservation of her body was due to cold winter soil and burial techniques. Yet the townspeople's response, reflects how fear and superstition can manifest in gruesome rituals. The ashes of Mercy Brown's heart tell one story, but in Eastern Europe, the tale of the living deceased has older, darker roots. Arnold Paole, Serbia's bloodthirsty deceased. Now, the story of Arnold originates in early 18th century Serbia, where the Ottoman Empire's records document one of Europe's first official vampire cases. Arnold, a soldier, reportedly passed away after being bitten by a vampire in his village. Soon after, villagers claimed to see him walking again at night, attacking others and drinking their body liquid, of course. Now, reports describe villagers hearing strange noises outside their homes, finding corpses supposedly torn and drained, and experiencing panic that spread through nearby towns. Authorities eventually exhumed Arnold's body. Witnesses stated the corpse appeared unusually fresh and displayed signs that would later become classic, vampire evidence. Red liquid at the mouth, a swollen body, and flexible limbs. Now, local superstition dictated that, he was staked kind of through the heart. When the procedure was done, villagers claimed the attacks ceased and, normalcy kind of returned. Now, Arnold's case is well documented in court and government reports, making it one of the earliest formal investigations into vampire phenomena. Now, the accounts were detailed, including descriptions of symptoms, villagers' testimonies, and the supernatural aura surrounding the body. Now, historians consider it a combination of folklore, fear of disease, and actual rituals. Yet for locals at the time, the vampire threat was as real as any soldier in the night. You might think these horrors belong to distant lands, places untouched by modern life, but Croglin Grange attacks prove otherwise. Sometimes the monster comes not from the graveyards or the forest, but from the very rooms where you sleep. The night hides more than shadows, and a predator can kind of slip past the door while you lie unaware, listening to the tick of the clock and the beat of your own heart. Croglin Grange, a country estate in England, became the site of an attack that would haunt local memory for generations. A woman named Bridget, who lived at the estate, claimed she woke in the middle of the night to find a terrifying figure in her bedroom. The intruder had a pale face, sharp teeth, and a thirst that drove it to attack her while she slept. She managed to actually fend off the creature using a poker, leaving deep scratches on its face. Now, the figure reportedly fled, but the family later found red marks leading from the room into the surrounding woods. Several nights later, the vampire returned, attacking other household members and leaving similar terrifying evidence. Locals conducted searches, found footprints, and even reportedly saw the creature at a distance. Scholars and folklorists, studying Croglin Grange became or believed it could have been a combination of mental illness, rabid animal attacks, and of course superstition. But the intensity and detail of the victims' accounts have kept the legend alive. Some reports even include journal entries and letters detailing the terror, which remain archived in local historical societies. The Croglin Grange vampire is chilling because it blends the domestic and the supernatural, unlike the distant crypts of other legends. This vampire invaded the home, preying on ordinary people at night. The psychological effect on the household is well documented, and descendants of the family have confirmed oral histories that corroborate the attacks. Croglin Grange is not a story of legend alone, it is a warning, and warnings are easy to ignore until someone like Bela turns them into reality. Europe in the early 20th century was not only haunted by superstition, it was stalked by an exterminator who blurred the line between myth and carnage. In his hands, the darkness became tangible, the undead literal, and the line between folklore and true horror vanished entirely. And so this brings us to the Bela vampire crimes. This is Hungary's real-life monster. Now, in 1916, Hungary became the stage for a real-life vampire slayer, Bela, a serial assassinator who lured young women to his workshop under the pretense of marriage. He kept them in metal barrels filled with alcohol, where they eventually passed away, obviously. And he reportedly drank their red liquid to prolong his own life. Now, authorities uncovered this horrifying secret years later when they investigated his abandoned property and discovered the barrels, each containing a corpse with signs of attempted preservation. Now, Kiss disappeared before his arrest, but speculation about his vampire, tendencies persisted. Reports from neighbors describe his obsession with vital fluids, strange nocturnal behavior, and apparent longevity despite his advancing age. Now, his case blends criminal reality with vampire myth, and it shocked Europe when discovered. Modern criminologists cite Bela as one of the first documented examples of a serial executioner explicitly linked to vampire practices. So the horror of Kiss is grounded in reality, unlike folklore. These crimes left physical evidence, police records, and terrified witnesses. His legend persists in Hungary with books, documentaries, and local lore warning of the vampire in the barrels who, may have evaded justice entirely. So, from London's misty cemeteries to the hidden workshops in Hungary, these tales remind us that vampires are more than fiction. They are the echoes of fear, the shadows, of the human imagination made flesh, and sometimes the very real horrors that refuse to stay buried. Whether you dismiss them as superstition or, steel yourself with reason, remember, every shadow in the dark could be watching. Every heartbeat in the silence could belong to something that will never truly fade. Which vampire legend shocked you the most? Let me know. I'm your host, Ashley. I'll see you in the next one. Those haunted houses you see on ghost shows where investigators walk through confidently with their flashlights, daring the darkness to make a sound? Now imagine one so cursed, so hostile, that even the professionals, the one who've seen it all, turned and ran. These are the homes where equipment fails, voices scream through empty rooms, and unseen hands reach out from the walls. The Monroe Demon House in Hartford City, Indiana. It started like every other investigation. A team of ghost hunters entered an old house in Indiana called the Monroe House, a place whispered to be cursed, but within minutes, something in the basement made them bolt. Cameras were dropped, equipment left behind. No one wanted wanted to go back inside. In that basement, there was a crawl space hidden behind a sealed door. Locals said the air inside was thick and metallic, and that strange growling sounds could be heard even from the street. Now, when investigators entered, they reported hearing whispers coming from the walls, and one of them claimed to see a shadowy figure crouched in the corner. Later,